Let's start from scratch. First, you'll need JJ installed. You can go ahead and pause the video now and install JJ. So what exactly is JJ? Well, it's a version control system. And if you run -- help, you will see a link to a tutorial here. But there's also another tutorial by Steve Klabnik that's really good. In my own words, though, I like to describe JJ as a version control system that knows how to work with multiple storage backends. One of the storage backend can be JJ's built-in storage backend, but another storage backend, which we'll use here, is the Git storage backend. Now, you're probably already familiar with Git. You probably use it every day. So that's what we're going to use here. Let's go ahead and clone a Git repository. This one's open source, so you can clone it too if you'd like. Then, let's go ahead and change into that repository, and you'll notice that there's only a .git directory here. So this is only a Git repository. It's not a JJ repository. If I run JJ in here, you'll notice that JJ says, hey, there's no JJ repository here, but I did find a Git repo. Would you like to use JJ with this Git backend? Well, yeah, I do. So I'll run JJ git init -- colocate, and the colocate flag says, hey, I want to use JJ and Git. That way I can get the benefits of both, right? Use JJ on the front end, but also use Git on the back end, because that's where I'm pushing my code to, right? A Git backend, like GitHub. Then you'll notice it says, hey, I successfully imported the Git repo and I'm using JJ here, but I found this default branch that you're not really tracking right now. You're not doing anything with it. So if you want to track this default branch in JJ, you can run JJ bookmark track main at origin, which is just the branch name and the remote name, right, from Git. And once you do that, now you're all set. You have JJ configured to use a Git backend, and it's tracking the default branch for this repository. So if I run JJ again, you'll see the actual log or the messages for the changes that I have here. Now, there's a lot going on here, I'm not gonna lie, and a lot of concepts may be new to you, but you have a few different things here in JJ. You have this concept of a change ID, and then you have the author name like you're used to, the date of the change was made, any bookmarks. So JJ doesn't use branches, they use what's called bookmarks, so we'll get into that. And then also kind of like an alias of where this is. So this is the Git Head. So if you want to refer to this as main or Git Head, they're both pointing to the same place. And then you have the underlying Git commit, and along with the message. So this makes sense. This is probably very familiar to you if you're used to Git status or Git log, and you've seen these sort of messages before. But what about this empty one up here? Well, this is akin to your Git staging area, right? It's the scratch work where you're doing, where you're actually doing work. So if I started editing files, this will be the change ID that they'll be associated with. And also the author and the description. And that's kind of powerful in JJ because you're kind of just operating on these changes. You kind of separate yourself from the concept of Git branches. You just kind of treat each change independently, and then you bookmark them if you want to assign a branch to it. And we'll get into that. Let's create some changes. Let's actually use JJ. So you can start here by either modifying files or creating files, or you can list your intent using JJ describe. So I can do JJ describe and say, hey, I want to create a new foo resource, right? This is Terraform, so I want to create a new resource. Great. Now you'll notice if I run JJ again, it says essentially my commit message, right, in quotes, is here. This is what I want to do. I want to create a new foo resource. Great. So let's actually make some changes here. Let's go into my editor. Let's go into provider.go. Let's create a new foo resource, right? So let's do this all live. Great. So we have a foo resource. Now let's edit the internal provider and let's create a resource foo.go. And I already have one of these kind of on the side, so I'll just pull it in. It's foo.go. So here we go. I've just created a new Terraform resource. It's completely unimplemented, right? The code here really doesn't matter. It's just a concept of I created something and now I have these changes. So notice the empty part of this went away because no longer is this scratch area or the staging area empty. There's changes here. How do I see what those changes are? Well, I can run JJ status and you'll see that I've modified this file and I've added this new file. And if I wanted to see what the difference is, I can just do that and run JJ diff and you can see the difference. And if you wanted to run JJ diff, you can also pass it a -- git flag and you'll get your diffs in Git format. which is really nice for posting them on PRs or whatever to get that nice highlighting. But aside from that, let's say I'm done here, right? I like these changes, they look good. What do I do? Well, I can run JJ commit. And JJ commit will say, okay, you are now going to commit these changes. And notice how it's using the text that you gave it from the describe earlier. So when you run JJ describe, you're just changing the commit message essentially. But now when I'm going to commit, I need to give it a commit message, its final commit message, so to speak. And I don't really like this one. I'm going to just do oxide foo and then, initial resource or initial foo resource. I like that commit message better. It's a little bit more conventional commits, whatever. So boom, I've just ran JJ commit and I've committed these changes. And you'll see that the commit is here and it created a new working copy commit or staging area or scratch area, whatever you want to call this. It created a new one on top. So if I ran JJ again, my old commit is there and I'm ready to start work again. So this is pretty great. But what if I wanted to assign this work that I did for the foo resource? What if I wanted to assign it to like some Git branch? How do I do that? Well, that's where JJ bookmark comes in. So you can do JJ bookmark create, give it a name like foo, and then you have to tell it which revision the bookmark should point to. So the revision is over here with this rev set, this change ID. And this right here is the fully qualified like revision ID or change set ID. I actually don't even remember what the correct term here is. I got to go look at it, but it doesn't really matter. This is the fully qualified version. But you notice that this O is highlighted differently than the rest. That is the prefix that uniquely identifies this change set. So I just have to say O here, and it knows to create a bookmark pointing to that revision. And you'll see that now this revision has a foo bookmark. And this is kind of the flow here, right? You do JJ new to get a new empty like workspace. You run some changes, do commit, blah, blah, blah. And it's really, really a nice flow here. So let's do it one more time. But this time, I don't want to start new changes from the foo branch. I want to start from the default branch again. So I can run JJ new main. And this now says, hey, you've created a new working copy or a new scratch area from main instead of from foo. And let's kind of go through that whole thing again. And this time we're just going to create a bar resource instead. So I'll go back in here and I'll do this new bar resource. I will edit internal provider resource bar.go and I'll read temp bar and boom. Now I have a bar resource in addition to a foo resource. And I'll just run JJ commit again and I'll do same idea, oxide bar, new bar resource or whatever I called it. And now if I look at JJ again, I have the foo resource and the bar resource. And quite frankly, I want these two commit messages to match, right? So I will actually do JJ describe you, and this will allow me to change the commit message. So I can do initial bar resource and boom. Now I've just changed the commit message without having to do some sort of git amend or whatever. I just did that. And much like the foo side, let's do a bookmark here, create bar, R, and then pass it the revision U. And now we're all set. We have our foo resource, we have our bar resource, everybody's happy, and they're both here. And if I wanted to, I can push these branches up to GitHub, but I'll show you how to do that a little later. And I can have these separate branches, but we'll get into that a little later. But now I have a pretty good set here. So let's talk about conflicts in JJ, because we've just done some basic commits, some changes. We did bookmarks that simulate branches, right? Like we did all that already. And let's talk about conflicts though. So let's assume that I like both of these foo and bar resources and I want to merge them into main. Now I'm not going to go through the official GitHub pull request flow. I'm going to keep it all local to simulate it. But what can I do? Well, I can run JJ rebase and I can say, hey, I want to rebase the foo branch or the foo bookmark onto main. So boom. So now if I run that and I run JJ, notice how it said it didn't do anything because foo already is on main. So is bar. So in fact, it's main pointing to foo and then main pointing to bar. But what if I wanted to rebase bar on top of foo to simulate, main, foo was merged into main, and then bar was merged into foo, which was merged into main. What if I wanted to simulate that? Well, let's do that. Let's do JJ rebase, and we'll rebase bar on top of foo. You'll notice that worked, but JJ's like, hey man, there's some conflicts here. You might want to figure this out. So let's kind of look at that. So if I just run JJ by itself, it'll say, hey, you have a conflict in this working copy. You also have a conflict here in this change. How do I fix this though? Obviously, if I fix it in the working copy, that doesn't really do much for this previous conflict. You kind of want to fix conflicts as early as possible so that JJ can fix them all in the ancestor tree. So what do I do? Well, that's where JJ edit comes in. You can JJ edit this specific change set, this U, and then now you're here, you're editing, and the JJ says, hey, there's a conflict in this file. So if you want, you can just edit this file, scroll down, and you'll see the conflict. One tried to add the foo resource, and one tried to add the bar resource. And you're going to have to use your brain here to figure out what the conflict resolution is, right? No AI here. So all you have to do, we know that we want both, right? We want the foo resource and the bar resource. So let's fix the conflict here, save it, and then we'll run JJ again. And you'll see no conflicts. Everything's really nice. You have main, then foo on top of it, and then bar on top of that. And everybody's happy. And if I actually ran JJ diff and I did it from main, you'll see that I have both changes nicely integrated. So we left off with our main, foo, and bar all based on one another, right? Main, the bar changes are on top of foo is on top of main. So we have this nice linear commit history, but really, I kind of want to combine foo and bar into one change, right? I don't really want to have two separate branches. They're both kind of related. Let's just push them both up at the same time. How can I do that? Well, JJ has a concept of squashing. So you can squash from bar, right, into, and then foo. And if you do that, you get this nice squash UI here that says, hey, what do you want your commit message to be? And I'll just change this entirely. I'll say like, foo bar, initial foo and bar resources, get rid of these old commit messages, and then save and quit. And now boom, now we have just one change on top of main, and there's two bookmarks pointing to it. There's bar and foo. So let's get rid of those two because we want to just have one bookmark. So we'll do JJ bookmark delete, and then bar and foo. Boom. Now those bookmarks are gone, and I just have my change on top. But I do want to actually create a bookmark and push it up somewhere. So let's do that now. So we'll do JJ bookmark create, and I'll call this one foobar, and I'll point this to the previous revision. And this is new, this @ symbol with the minus. So I'll just show that real quick. The current working copy is always referred to with the @ symbol. And then you can use the hyphen or minus symbol to refer to ancestors of it, which is actually great because I can do @ minus to refer to the previous the previous change. So I'll do JJ bookmark create foobar -r @ minus, which is going to get this one right here. And now I have the foobar bookmark. You see it there really nicely. And now how do I get this up to Git? Right? It's really nice to have this all locally, but I have not pushed anything to Git yet. And I know you're very curious of how to do that. So let's show you. You can do JJ git push, tell it which bookmark you want to push. And in this case, I want to push foobar. And you could optionally tell it the remote to push it to, but it defaults to origin. So you see here, JJ is like, hold up, you're doing something that is potentially destructive. I need you to do two things. One, I need you to tell me that it's okay to push a new bookmark, because that can be potentially overriding and destructive. And if you want to optionally specify the remote, you can do that. So I'll just say the default remote of origin is fine, and you can push this bookmark and allow new. And you'll see now JJ has pushed this up, and it even gives you a nice little URL that you can follow saying, hey, if you want to create a pull request for this, here's the URL to use. So I'll just go to this, refresh the page, and you'll see that I have pushed foobar just recently, and I can compare it and give it a pull request here and say, hey, here's all my changes, and do the normal Git pull request that you're used to. So that's how you kind of squash clean history, make bookmarks, and do all the things. But what if I don't want these changes anymore? Let's say like this foobar stuff. I don't want this anymore. Well, I can do something pretty quickly. I can do JJ bookmark delete foobar. And now I've deleted this bookmark, but I haven't deleted it remotely. So if I still go back to the upstream GitHub, you'll see that the foobar branch is still here. If I want to delete it up there in Git, I have to do JJ git push bookmark foobar, and you'll see that it has now deleted the bookmark. And if I go back here, that foobar branch is gone. Notice it dropped from 13 to 12. And now I've deleted the foobar branch. And I don't want these changes anymore. But what about the actual change that I made, right? I still have this change ID here. I still have this here. How can I like just throw this all away? Well, JJ has a command called abandon. So you can say JJ abandon, and I want to abandon this O revision, and boom, it is now abandoned that. And now if I run JJ again, we're back to where we originally started with our default branch with an empty change, like working copy on top. Now I want to show you some sort of tips, tricks, and other things that you can do with JJ. If you're a maintainer of any open source project, you probably have people that fork your repository. So for example, I have this Oxide computer Terraform provider Oxide. That's the normal repository for the Terraform provider. And then I have my fork here under my sudo Mateo namespace. How can I use JJ to get access to this fork? Well, I can do JJ git remote add sudo Mateo and point it to the actual place of where the remote is located. Now I have multiple remotes. So I do JJ remote list. You'll see I have the origin remote and the sudo Mateo remote. And if I want to pull those changes, I can do JJ git fetch. But if I do that without any options, it just fetches from my origin remote because that's the default. If I want every change from every remote, I can do -- all remotes. And now you'll see I have this bookmark here, this sudo Mateo, this readme updates on the sudo Mateo remote. And if I wanted to see what the difference is there, I can do JJ diff -- from readme updates at sudo Mateo. This is bookmark at remote. And you'll see that the only thing that I did here was, change this right here. But you got to be careful because I did from this. So technically I'm seeing the reverse diff. If I wanted to see it correctly, I'd have to do to, right? Because you want to do it from your main to sudo Mateo, not from sudo Mateo to main. It really depends on how you want to view the diff, but the correct real diff here is this bottom one. So just be careful when you're using JJ git diff because from and to can be a little confusing if you're not used to it. Outside of this though, what else can I do? Well, one thing that you probably are wondering is, what if I have multiple changes? So I'll do like, hello in this readme, and then I will edit the contributing guide. So let's say I'll just do hello in here too. So I've made 2 changes here. And if I did JJ status, you'll see I've modified contributing and I've modified the readme. How do I just commit one of those as the change though? So in Git, you would do like git add and then whatever file paths you want to add. In JJ though, by default, it wants to commit everything that you've changed. So how do I just tell it like I want to commit just one thing? That's where JJ split comes in. You run JJ split, it'll bring up a nice little TUI here. You can use the space bar to select something, and then when you're ready, so if in this case I just want to commit the changes in README, I can hit C, and then this says commit, and then I write a message, README updates. Or I'll change the name of that. Hello in README. Okay, and now you'll notice that I've just modified the README, and if I did JJ status, I still have that modification to contributing that I haven't done anything with. So that's how you can split your changes and only add certain files. What if I didn't like what I just did here, right? I just created this commit and I didn't really like what I did here. Well, I already showed you that you can abandon this whole sort of change entirely, but you can also run JJ undo. JJ undo will undo the last operation, and much like any other undo, so if you see what I did there, now that README commit is gone and I still have my changes back for both files. But if I run JJ undo again, it'll undo the undo and so on and so forth. So you don't want to get yourself into that undo cycle. But there is a JJ op, and this allows you to see which JJ operations you want to do. And you can undo a certain amount of undos. You can undo a certain amount of operations, and you can just, go back as far in the tree as you want. So I'll just do JJ op show, and you can see like kind of the last operations that I've done, right? I've changed some commits, I changed the working copy, blah, blah, blah. You can use this to find out which operations you want to undo so that you can go back to a certain point in time if you'd like. The last thing I want to show you is tags. So this is an unfortunate reality, but JJ has a tag subcommand, but it only lets you list tags. So I can see all of those beautiful Git tags that I have for all these Terraform provider releases, but I can't create tags with JJ. And that's a huge kind of blocker for me personally as someone who creates releases. So you have to call out to Git to do your tags. You can't even do JJ Git tag because there is no subcommand there. You actually have to use like native Git tag and do like, foobar and then point it to main or something. So now you have to drop back to, here, I'll just write that right there. You have to drop back to Git to do an actual tag update. And then JJ will be happy to list it though. So you'll see that it sees it. And you could even see these things and maybe even push them, but you have to go back to raw Git if you want to create tags and then push them up, which is kind of a bummer in my opinion, but I did want to show you. And that's what I wanted to show you in this sort of hands-on JJ tutorial. We actually covered a lot of stuff. We covered abandon, we covered bookmark, commit, describe, diff, edit, git, help a little bit, log, new, operation, rebase, show, split, squash, tag, undo. We covered a bunch of stuff here. And that's kind of most of what you're gonna have to use JJ for. And there's more, obviously. There's so much more to JJ that you can use and learn about. A lot of people spend time reading the JJ configuration to update their JJ config. So I'll show you that real quick. So config JJ, it's just a toml file. I don't have much in it right now. I'm still kind of figuring out what I really want to change in JJ from the default before I make those changes myself. So everything you saw here was the default aside from this config that I show you here. And all this config does is says, hey, use this name and email as the author information. Unless I'm in this Oxide directory, then use this Matthew Snobbery Oxide computer. So it's like, that's the only JJ config I've done, but there's so much more that you can do. You can make templates, you can make commands, you can make all of these cool stuff with JJ. And I encourage you to really use it and try it out. I think you'll really, really like it.